Hello, this is Andrew with MyMillion.bike, and I've been meaning to do this video for a long time. Raw is this coming weekend, the ride across Wisconsin. It will be the longest ride that I have ever done, and I'm expecting that all of this stuff, the stuff that I've learned from doing other long rides, will come in handy. And so I just wanted to make this video to kind of explain what I do when I go for a long ride, and hopefully that will be useful for other people. A long ride is going to be somewhat dependent on where you are in your progression as a cyclist. When I first started cycling, the idea of going 60 miles seemed insurmountable to me. That's no longer the case, but the principles that I learned as I figured out how to do 60 miles and then 80 miles and then 100 miles and then beyond are the same principles that I'm going to use to do raw. And I think that those same principles are just as useful to anybody who is going to go out for a 60-mile ride or a 70-mile ride or whatever. So hopefully you agree with me, and you can find some value here. So there are a few things that are super important. The first thing is that you want to make sure that you have your devices charged up. If you have a relatively modern bike computer, you probably don't have to worry about the battery level like getting to 100% when you head out for a 60 or 70 mile ride. But if you're going beyond that, you probably do, especially if you're going to incorporate mapping or navigation in that, because that'll hit the battery harder. You also want to make sure that any accessories that you have, these are my headlamp and the Varia tail lamp. These I always, on a long ride, I always make sure that they are charged up completely, because you never know if it's going to get dark or whatever, with the rain. So make sure that those are charged up. If you have Di2, you might want to charge your Di2. I generally only charge the Di2 2 or 3 times a year, so it's not as critical a thing, but it's definitely something that you want to monitor and know where you're at before you head out, because if you're 50 miles from home and your battery dies, it's going to be an inconvenient ride back. It's a lot easier if you have a D-Fly or a wireless unit as part of your Di2 installation, because then you can just check your battery level on the bike computer. It's a little bit easier on a Garmin than it is on a Wahoo, but both of them will show you where you're at, and you just want to make sure that you're over 40% or over 30% or whatever your comfort level is, just to make sure that you're good to go in that direction. I might get some flack for this, but I think that it is super important to have a saddlebag when you're going for a long ride. Part of this is that you know what's in there. You don't have to worry about carrying all that stuff on your body. In my saddlebag, my road saddlebag, I always have 2 tubes, 2 patches, 2 CO2s, a CO2 inflator, a multi-tool, some tube patches, just in case, and then occasionally some other stuff that is related, that might be specific to the ride. Like in some places I might bring a multi-tool, which would have like a pair of scissors or a knife or something like that. But that's the general guidance. Oh, and a bike pump. As I mentioned, part of that is not just consistency, but also to keep space in your jersey pockets so that you're not shoving tubes and CO2 canisters and all that other stuff in your jersey pockets, because you need that space for food. But you also want to make sure that you pick the right jersey, so that you have a jersey that has enough pockets and those pockets are appropriately sized. One of the things that I really like on this jersey, and this is a Jack Rue jersey that I had custom made. There's actually going to be a new design coming out in a little while, so if anybody's interested in grabbing one, I can show you how to buy those. Is this zipper pocket. If you drive to a ride and you need somewhere to put the fob for your car, this is a great place to put it. It's also a great place to put your license or identification, if you have a health insurance card, credit card, a mask, that kind of thing. Things that you need to keep away from all the other stuff in your pockets as you're messing around back here. You don't want that stuff to fall out. Like when you're pulling out food or whatever, you don't want to drop your key fob. on the ground. Having that zipper pocket, both from a safety and a cleanliness perspective, is awesome. I like to keep the food that I'm eating in the left pocket, noting that this is jerseys backwards. The food that I'm eating goes in the left pocket, my phone, and the food that I will eventually eat goes in the middle, and then things that are kind of messy or the empty wrappers go in the right. And so having these three clear pockets makes it really easy to transition from here to here, and here to there when I'm done. One of the messy things that I put into this pocket is drink mix in these packets. I get these are little like snack pack Ziplocs from Target. I don't know, this is the only place I'm able to find them, but they're fantastic. Having these in whatever your serving size is, already pre-scooped in your jersey, is great. But when you get a little bit sweaty, sometimes the bags leak a little bit, it's kind of nice to just have them in their own little place where you're going to put your wrapper so you don't really care what happens in this pocket. And then just, when you take it out, even if it's a little bit gross, no big deal. Great transition into nutrition. I like to use a drink mix. I think that that's one of the most reliable ways to ensure that you get the salt, the sodium, the potassium, and the carbs that you need. I like the Science and Sport, or SIS, drink mix, but there's lots of other great options from other companies. Whatever you choose, that it has salt, it has potassium, and it has both kinds of sugars or carbs, so you can take advantage of both of the carb intake pathways, because you want to get to that 90 gram number to ensure that you can keep the nutrition flowing so that you don't bonk on your ride. I do not use their recommended strength. I cut it down. So in a 1 liter bottle, they would have you put 4 scoops, and I only put 3. So this only has 3 scoops of the drink mix in it for this 1 liter bottle. Well, we'll talk about this in a second. The other nutrition stuff, I like to use the Cliff shot blocks, but gels are essentially the same thing. I just find these to be, it's a little bit easier to break them down into different amounts of food at one time, because you can take 1 block, 2 blocks, or 3 blocks instead of having to take the entire gel, which is usually about 30 grams of carbs in one go. Depending on where I'm at calorically for the day and what the pace of the ride is, I'll either do 2 of these per hour or 3 of them per hour. If it's a relatively low-paced ride, which most of my long rides are, I do 1 every 30 minutes, 1 block every 30 minutes. If it's a little bit more spirited, then I would generally do 3 to get the calories in, but you do have to be a little bit careful because you don't want to overload your gut, and because you can end up in a bad place if you overload your gut. You just stop digestion, and then you get bloated and other nasty things. With the stopping your gut, you do need to be careful with these as well. I mostly carry this Cliff Bar, and this is the caramel toffee sea salt. It's 250 calories. It is, let's see, 320 grams of sodium, 320 milligrams of sodium, 180 milligrams of potassium, and then 45 grams of carbohydrate. I don't know what kind of carbs these are, but I don't generally eat this as a way to get nutrition. I eat it so that I don't feel hungry. Knowing that number is important because then you can meter out, adjust the other stuff that is going on with your nutrition. So I would generally eat this guy around lunchtime, maybe a little bit past, so I don't feel hungry, but then I would skip the next 2 or so shot blocks because I've taken in that 45 grams of carbs. This is optional though, if you don't feel hungry, if you don't feel that uncomfortableness, then you can easily fuel either just using shot blocks, just using the shot blocks or gels, and a drink mix. I mentioned that this was a 1 liter bottle. It's actually 950. I think it's really important to have large water bottles because you can always fill it half full if you're worried about weight. But when you're out in the middle of nowhere, you want to make sure that you don't get yourself into a bad place with hydration. Having essentially 2 liters of water with you when you head out and then after you refill them is a pretty good way to ensure that you're not going to end up in a bad hydration place. The other part of not ending up in a bad hydration place is having a plan. I don't always make a plan, but on longer rides when I try to get out away from civilization because civilization slows you down, having a plan to know where you're going to stop for water, even if it's roughly. So putting yourself through a small town that has a gas station or a convenience store or something like that will make sure you can get the water and also can provide a place for you to use the restroom if you need to do that. Hopefully, this is going to be enough for me for raw. Hopefully, you all found this to be useful. If you think I missed something for what you do on a long ride, feel free to drop those in the comments. There's a lot of nuance in this. I probably missed some things, and there are probably things that you all do on a long ride that makes it more successful. This is just what I do. So plop those comments below, and yeah, thanks for watching. Cheers.